right. Thanks for tuning in to Mountaintop Media. We have the one and only Rich Gallardo today, District 1 Supervisor candidate for Shasta County. How are you doing this morning?
The one and only. I might say some people might be thankful there's only one of me, but that's okay. That's just,
You got a twin brother, but you guys
I
both
do
have your own.
a doppelganger, yes.
You guys do have your own personalities, though.
Yes, we do. Yeah, thanks for the invite. I've been doing lots of interviews in the last month and a half, roughly, all kinds. This is my first podcast video interview, but the rest of them have been TV, radio. But yeah, it's, we're in interesting times. Running for District 1 against, Kevin Cry and Aaron Resner. And let's get Aaron out of the way right away. She supported the tax measure. She voted for an illegal land sale. The city budget mess is it's a mess. It's exactly that, even though a fellow council member tried to help her with additional information and research, and just such a mess. And she's not regretted any of those decisions. And so she's likely going to continue those similar decisions, at the county level. And so I just don't think the county voters want that. And I do realize District 1 is the most left liberal leaning county district. I do get that. But nonetheless, even the District 1 voters on Measure A resoundingly defeated Measure A. So, and you've talked about this and I've talked about it. When your freedoms and liberties being taken away finally hits the pocketbook, that's when, unfortunately, people really start paying attention, when it directly hits their individual pocketbooks. And Measure A showed that. So I just, I don't think Aaron's going to be a popular vote. But the thing is, I like Kevin Cry. I do. I voted for him his first run. I supported him, put up his signs during the recall that failed against him. And he's a good guy. I just think he's misguided, and I think some of his morals are lacking. His constitutional morals are lacking. And the last 3 years, corresponding with Kevin back and forth about many different things and many meetings with him. And, the things really started to kind of go sideways regarding election reform. And this was even before Measure B. But, I'll tell you right now, the three things that made me run against him were his vote to suspend the Election Commission. That should never have happened. His vote to try to stop the Measure B petition. That should have never happened. That has always been a totally legal, lawful process. Direct democracy, honestly. And then the license plate reader cameras were just, and they use Zogfire money. If I was in that office, I would have not spent that money other than on direct to the victims of Zogfire, something like that. I would have not spent them on anything else. And then the cameras are unconstitutional. There's, several Supreme Court decisions that generically speak about unconstitutional electronic surveillance and data gathering without a warrant. Those Supreme Court opinions don't specifically talk about cameras, but they do talk about GPS locating and grabbing third-party cell site service information, such as locations and stuff like that. So if those three things had not happened, I would not be here today. I really would not. I just wouldn't. Kevin's done some decent things in office, but I kind of liken it to 6-year-old psychology or 8-year-old psychology. Your 8-year-old might be doing really good at home, washing dishes, mowing the lawns, helping to wash the car, making their bed. Great. Those are all good things, but they're also expected things in a good moral society. But then if that same kid goes out and steals from a liquor store, you don't give them a pass for stealing from the liquor store because they're doing good things at home. You just don't do that. That's not a moral thing to do and an ethical thing to do. You have to punish them or make note of their bad actions and correct those actions. And like I said, I had a meeting with Kevin roughly October last year. And the specific reason for the meeting was for Kevin to tell me why not to run against him. And he knew all these things that I just talked about in the last minute. He and I had copious conversations about all these things, and what was wrong, what should have happened, what shouldn't have happened, how it can be remedied, et cetera, et cetera. And he was not willing to do it. And so I had this meeting with him, and he suggested we have a couple of witnesses there. I said, great, that's actually a really good idea. So we had 2 agreed upon witnesses there, and their witnesses' roles were just to sit and listen. And after an hour, Kevin couldn't do it. And I don't know, I think I did everything I could in fairness to help Kevin change things, remedy things, undo things. And then having that meeting was like, Kevin, this is it, man. This is the Hail Mary, And I told him, I said, it's not my first choice to want to run, but our founding fathers warned us, before the Constitution was made and after, even soon after. It's like, remember, it's a constitutional republic. If you can keep it, right? You have to have morals and ethics and certain foundational beliefs to be able to keep the republic. And they said, do not allow your elected leaders, representatives to start encroaching. Minimal encroachments, right? Tea Party, taxes, all that, all these minimal encroachments. As soon as you allow one and then let it pass, it does nothing but get worse. And here we are, 250 years later, and we can see how far we are from our original constitutional structure and the values. And I cannot. So I talked to other people about District 1 and the race coming up, and who knew? We didn't know. We pretty much thought Erin Resner would run, and of course she is. But there was no other person in District 1 that had, I believe, the fortitude to stand up and say no, that's not acceptable. These 3 decisions that I mentioned, that's not acceptable. And unfortunately, Kevin continues to justify those publicly. I've heard privately from people that he's kind of regretted those decisions, but that's in private. That does nothing to change what the votes have done. So here I am. I cannot put my head down at night. My integrity, my pride, my reputation, my honor are what I have left at the end of the night when I put my head down. Okay, material things don't matter to me. Those are what I have, and I've always cherished those to the utmost. And I try to raise my son the same way. At the end of the day, that's what you have left that is your own. Do not do anything to, and he's young, of course, he'll make mistakes, and we all do. Even at our age, we make mistakes, but still, try to keep those things in mind. Every time you open your mouth, every time you make a decision, just got to keep those things in mind. You got to be solid. And nobody else would step forward or could step forward to run in District 1. Here I am.
Can you start out with maybe a little bit of your early life and just, I always like to, I don't think we've ever talked about that with candidates. I like to know a little bit more about people. Want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Born in Santa Barbara, raised in Ventura County through about middle of high school. My parents split up at the time, so my dad stayed down there. My mom came up here. I have 3 siblings, so there's 4 boys total. 2 of us came up here with my mom in the middle of high school. So I graduated from Anderson High School. And eventually all 4 of us boys graduated from Anderson High School, and my son's going to graduate there too. So a little bit of history down there in Anderson. After high school, I went into the service, into the Navy. Couple years on the ship, and then I went to military police school, and then so I was a military policeman for several years. I did a little time in the National Guard also. So I did 5 years active duty total, and 16 years reserve for a total of 21 years. So I've since retired from the military. In the Guard, I did heavy equipment and explosives, demolition, like learning how to blow up bridges and stuff. Pretty cool stuff, right? So, so that's what I've done there. I do have 18 years with Cal Fire, and I'm not doing that. It's been about 10 years. I've been in the private sector as mostly a commercial driver. And I love the private sector, by the way. I did a lot of time in government, state government, federal government. I did 1.5 years as a Ventura County fire dispatcher, which is a great job, but you know, that's a rat race down there. Ventura is just a bedroom community for LA. So I'm like, I'm out of here. Came back up here to Redding. So, yeah, that's my history as far as that's concerned. But as far as my constitutional history, my knowledge, I never got really any good constitutional instruction from the governments, even though I swore an oath at all those government jobs. You swear an oath to uphold and defend.
But
okay?
you don't ever, you're not ever required to study
You
it.
don't really get, there's no test, okay, before you take that oath. And I of course, find that absurd, obviously.
There's a lot of woke tests, though.
Yeah, there's plenty of woke tests and plenty of videos. And yeah, so, you know, so you learn how to work with somebody that's biologically a male, but physically, but mentally wants to be a female. Yeah, there's plenty of training out for that, how to work around those people, but no training. So I've got all my constitutional knowledge really even after I got out of the service. You know, Mark Levin, Chris Ann Hall, Robert Barnes. There's some good top constitutional attorneys. And yes, I know Mark Levin's doing some really weird things right now. He's kind of off on the rails on a few things. However, his constitutional knowledge is separate from all of what I believe are some things that he's doing incorrect now. But his constitutional knowledge is still separate. He does not mix those. So he is still a top constitutional attorney. And yeah, that's what made me just really fall in love with myself as a citizen and my duties as a citizen. It's the citizen's job, really, to build this country, to make it, to keep it safe. It's not the government's job to do any of that stuff. The government's job is really to protect our rights. And unfortunately, the governments at all levels, and now unfortunately even locally, they're making some decisions that are actually eroding our rights. And that's not acceptable. That's not acceptable.
Yeah, I think in society we've been tricked into this idea that it's all out of our hands. There's nothing we can do, and the government's our mommy, and you know, just trust everything, and it's all part of the plan. You know, so we do have to realize that we the people are the ones that have the power. We outnumber.
We're it.
Yeah, we are the last stand. We're the last ditch.
And it's a hard paradigm shift because for decades and generations, we the public have been taught and brainwashed by the public schools, by media, by Hollywood, you know, the mainstream news that, you know, we're to pay attention to everything from the top down. You know, everything's about the president and Congress and this and that, and that's very unfortunate. And that's a huge paradigm shift. We started during the Modi recall. Well, I say Modi because we got him, but during recall Shasta, right? That was kind of our attempt to get back some local control, you know. And we did good things for a couple of years there after that recall was successful, and school board changes and all that. We had some really good changes, but
the only mistake is we should have got Dale Ball in. I'm just joking.
No, I couldn't vote. I couldn't vote during that recall, but I absolutely, I do. Anybody that asks me, and I've told Dale this even maybe a couple months ago. I'm like, Dale, I always said people vote for Dale. I always did that.
Yeah,
and you know, even though I couldn't vote, I said
I wasn't
Dale
in
Ball's
that
the
district
guy.
either, but
and I wasn't. But I said Dale needs to get in there. He's the most engaged. So, you know, again, talking about this paradigm shift, it's difficult. I'm seeing people that I thought were conservative Republicans are having a really hard time absorbing these, what I perceive are constitutional violations, and other people also perceive the same. But it's weird. It's just people are having it's like a mental block of sorts. It's like, well, maybe there were some bad decisions, but we can't have Aaron Resner in there. And say, well, hold on. Let's go back to the maybe there was some bad decisions part. Do we allow that to stand? And again, it goes back to the 8th grade psychology. If you let the bad behavior go without punishment, it's going to continue. That's actually human nature. I mean, even adults fall into that issue. But more importantly, the state of California does a bang up job taking our rights, liberties, money. I mean, my gosh, they take, probably 1,500 to 2,000 bills a year. And then you add the regulations that pass attached to those very same bills. and they're taking everything away at an exponentially hyper rate. And we cannot have local officials doing the same. The local officials at a minimum should keep the state at bay at a minimum, but more than that, they actually should be helping us fight getting some of that back. And so, just real quick, my website is Gallardo for Supervisor. It's the number 4, gallardoforsupervisor.com. It's a very lengthy website. I understand, but I have things, there's tabs on there. There's things that I want to do that are separated by category. And there's a lot of really novel. I'm a novel thinker, John, just like you 3 years ago when I went to the board and said, we need to separate the ballots. It's too bad we didn't separate the ballots.
I brought it up
because
many
if we
times. I
had
thought it
done
was a
that,
good idea.
if we had done that back then, number one, Measure B may not be needed, or Measure B would have a little more legal force to it because of the whole municipal affair thing. Elections are municipal affairs and all that, and so Measure B, I think, would have less legal blowback if we had separated the ballots and taken control of the local ballots and the local races. And to this day, we still need to separate the ballots, by the way. Absolutely, we do. So there's just a lot of novel ideas. There's things I want to do. And again, I don't have any notes in front of me, but, I want to stop our local government from seizing land strictly for tax liens. Just stop that. Just don't do it. It's just not the right thing to do. All right.
So I'm very interested in that because I don't know where that comes in. The sheriff just says, hey, I'm the supreme leader. And it's kind of, I don't know how do we get there? Because I do believe that you can't own something if someone can take it from you if you don't pay a tax when you don't owe anything on it. I think everybody should be able to own at least one property. Now, I think if you own 100 properties and you're renting a bunch out and Airbnb-ing them and doing all this stuff, I think that's like business stuff, but at least you should be able to own one piece of land, one property for your homestead.
There is a Homestead Act, right? And the federal government has been chipping away at that for decades also. There are some homestead protections, but not like there was 30, 40 years ago.
But if you are homestead, what are you still paying on tax? You get some breaks or something? It's not.
Well, again, those are all discussions to be had, right?
Yeah.
But the fact that the government can come in and take your land for non-payment of taxes, I think that's wrong. We got to change that. And this was Gary Oxley's idea. He's running for District 5 against Kellstrom. Gary wants to get away from the district-based elections and go to county at large. And the city of Reading does at-large elections, right? The city does not have voting districts.
Yeah.
And that'll get rid of the gerrymandering. And I think that's a good thing because, as we all know, there's 5 board members. Right now it's District 1 and 5 up for election. But whomever's in 1 and 5, how their votes affect the voters in 2, 3, and 4, right? So every board member's vote affects everybody. So I agree with that. I think that would be a good thing to switch to at-large elections. We have to have some fiscal responsibility. And the one idea that I keep pitching, and the county's not doing it, the county wants to put in some checks and balances for money going to NGOs and nonprofits. That's fine, but they're front-loading with some stuff as far as, looking at the financials of these entities and make sure they have certain policies and procedures in place before they get government money. But right now, the county's falling short. I've always said we pass a local ordinance. Does not have to be in the charter. It can be a general law ordinance that says any NGO nonprofit in Shasta County has to have a separate bank account strictly for the government money coming in and going out. And then we make those documents public. The bank statement's public. Why? Because it's only government money coming in and out. So it's very easy to justify that. And that would, number one, that's going to chase off half of the NGOs and nonprofits because they don't want to be that transparent. So that's another idea that I have.
Then you have, DAs and sheriffs and city councils and mayors and things like that on some of these boards. And I'm not accusing them of anything, but I don't know. That's where do you go for justice sometimes?
Well, again, let's just make it public. It's taxpayer money coming in and out. That should be 100% transparent because we, the people, should be the check and balance, okay? Not the Board of Supervisors. Now, they are our representatives. But again, the power down to the lowest level in a republic is the people. And I also would like, and again, I'd like smaller, limited government, but I also believe in the citizen check and balance. All right. That's why I disagree with the election commission being suspended well over a year ago. And I think there also should be a commission, an oversight, not advisory, two different things. There should be oversight commission over the DA and the sheriff. Let's put one in over public health. Yes, there's committees on public health, citizen advisory committees, but they're not oversight. There needs to be citizen oversight over the public health departments in this county. And others also. Those are the three big ones that I think we need some citizen oversight, check and balance. But I have a lot of ideas on my website, a lot of really novel ideas. And again, you know, I work for local, state, and federal government in the last 30 years. And I've seen where they work well, and I've certainly seen where they don't work so well and not so transparent and efficient with the taxpayer money. And so it's that experience that gives me the ability for these novel ideas to put in place. And so it's one of the tabs on my website. I think it's what I want to do is the tab across the top. And that has all these ideas. And I have many. A second grand jury. I've been calling for this board of supervisors for 4 years plus. The California Constitution allows multiple grand juries. But even though I've been saying it for 4 years, we still don't have a second grand jury in place, strictly with the mission statement of investigating government waste, fraud, and abuse and issuing criminal indictments. We still don't have it. I'm just reaching because my phone's buzzing. So there's a lot of ideas on there that I think would work well. And the status quo is just, well, obviously there's a lot of people not happy with status quo. Right now, you know, the elections registrar's race and the District 1 race, I think, are probably the two top, visible races. And the District 5 race, a little less so, but still, you know, people are really watching these three races. So, yeah, I'm here to just try to make some good change, return the power to the people, actual local control, but actually do it. And being a charter is very important. It's extremely important. I don't know, I brought that up probably 3.5 years ago to the board, and it didn't go anywhere. And then finally, I guess Kevin brought it in about 2.5 years ago, roughly. Good, great. Again, he's done some good things. And the people overwhelmingly passed the charter, you know. And then we have two charter amendments, I believe. One is term limits, I think, and the other one is replacing a vacant board seat. But another thing I want to do is the law allows for a citizen elected charter commission, elected by the people. That is extremely interesting. When I found that out a couple of years ago when I read that, I'm like, whoa. And again, it's an advisory commission. However, they're voted by the people. So that gives that commission great political clout and great political power, because they're elected by the people. And there's some,
So what would they be in charge of, or what would they have
similar
power
to the
over?
elections commission that was suspended? This charter commission would meet. It would be a Brown Act meeting, and with the sole cause of getting ideas from the public, maybe even getting ideas from the board, put it all in a big old blender, talking about it, right? And it's a recipe, right? We need to make a recipe for a very successful charter county. And, Kevin and even Patrick Jones has said in the past, well, maybe 1 or 2 charter items per ballot, you know, because it could overwhelm the public and yada, yada. And I disagree with that. A well-written, clear and concise charter amendment, several of them, as long as they're just clear and concise and not too overburdened with getting into the weeds kind of stuff. I think we can get several charter amendments done per election cycle. And there's a lot of work to do. Again, right? Charter amendments, if it's in our charter, it's the will of the people. It's direct democracy. And I don't necessarily believe in direct democracy, right? That's 3 wolves and 2 sheep at a table, and they're going to vote what's for dinner. Okay? So that kind of direct democracy can have, obviously, grave pitfalls. But it's here. The initiative process is here. Approximately 24 states, roughly, in our union have the initiative process. But let's use it for good. It's been used for bad in the past, Prop 4757. You know, the people voted to minimize criminal penalties. Are you kidding me? That doesn't make sense, honestly. But see, that was an example of the initiative process being used for what I will say not for good purposes. But we have to get a lot of charter amendments, and that commission will hear from the public, and then the commission can forward all those recommendations to the Board of Supervisors. Because the way a charter makes it onto the ballot is either through the legislative body, which is the Board of Supervisors, or the citizens, which is what we did with Measure B, because the Board of Supervisors would not enact local election reform. So then we had to take action, and that's a lot of work. Okay, that's a lot of work, you know, especially on a countywide petition. So we need to really embolden and strengthen our charter with the participation of the people. And that's the beauty of it. When the people sign something to say they want it, and that's pretty powerful. So I've talked to Kevin about this too. I said, let's get this charter commission going. Let's not wait till this election or the November election. Let's get this charter commission. We can get it on the November ballot. Plenty of time to do things for the November ballot. Let's get this charter commission on the November ballot. Let's start now. No time to waste. So anyway, interesting times. You know, again, I'm compelled to run. Wasn't necessarily my first choice, but, you know, I've been involved in county politics for a few years now. And because of my knowledge and experience with governments at all levels, and I have good constitutional knowledge. I'm not an expert, but I'm 15 years into my constitutional study with those folks that I mentioned earlier. And I feel very comfortable with my constitutional knowledge. I'm not an expert, never will be, and I can use that also. So here we are.
Awesome. What about G. Edward Griffin? You like him, or you?
He's good.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. There's some good. There's good
favorites.
guys from the '80s. Yeah, he was real big in the '70s, '80s. You know, for sure.
I think
but he's
going
still
back to the '60s.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. You know, there's great, true constitutional conservatives. You know, and then as far as we're going to end up here in a couple minutes, but all getting back to philosophers. You know, Griffin, you know, is a political philosopher of sorts, and I like the economic philosophers. You know, Thomas Sowell. Who's the other one? I forget the other one, but there's, you know, I'm a true capitalist, supply and demand. I'm not a crony capitalist. What a crony capitalist is somebody that believes the government should get involved and pick the winners and losers. And unfortunately, you know, Kevin Cry wants his, you know, this bridge built off of Buenaventura. Is it needed for emergency purposes? Well, yeah, now that there's hundreds of homes, but the federal government's broke. The state government is broke. You know, the federal government's they're taking in about $5.5 trillion in tax receipts a year, but they're spending $6.5 to $7 trillion. So the federal government doesn't have any money to be handing out, not without putting our kids and grandkids and great grandkids into further debt. So, you know, these are hard choices. These are hard choices. You know, I want to get our fiscal house in order.
I mean, I think it's simple.
We need to sacrifice.
The people that are putting up the housing, all those houses should be the ones that say, hey, if you want to do this, then put the bridge up.
Additional, you know, means of egress and all that. So
it was pretty crazy because I live up there and during the Carr fire, and it was, I mean, it was across the river, and then as soon as it jumped the river, everyone was in the car, and it was like 3 miles an hour. And there's like 1,000-foot flames coming.
Well, again, I was Cal Fire 18 years. I've been in that. I've been in that in a fire engine. It's those are not fun things, but. Anyways, the reality is we have to get our fiscal house in order. We have to start sacrificing now for the sake of minimizing the debt for our kids and grandkids. And of course, that's a whole nother conversation. But anyways, I appreciate the time. And do you have any other questions? And
no, not really. I mean, it's just giving you the floor and letting you get your message out there. And we're letting everybody's voice is going to be heard, whoever wants to come on, you know. So cool. I appreciate you coming on, Rich.
Yeah, thank you, John.
All right.
And thanks, Leslie, for producing.